One in 5 children in the United States is obese, not overweight, obese. And the medication we are now prescribing to children for blood pressure, for cholesterol, for blood sugar, those are medications we used to see in adults over 50. But here's what I want you to hear. This is not inevitable, and it's not about willpower or discipline. It's about what we build into children's daily life before the habits become permanent. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Mojibola Ogunfowora, a board-certified pediatrician and adolescent medicine specialist, who's going to give us the practical real-world formula for raising healthier kids. Not the version that sounds good in a textbook, but the version that works when your child loves screens and eats broccoli. If you're a parent or a grandparent, a teacher, or anyone who loves a child, this episode is for you. Welcome to When Food Meets Medicine, the podcast where we explore what you eat affects how your medication works and how your health thrives. I'm Dr. Remi Olukoya, pharmacist, and I believe the best medicine is often the one a child never has to take because we prevented the need for it in the first place. So today we're talking about childhood obesity prevention, not treatment, prevention. Because the habits we build in childhood shape health for a long time. And this is true for children in Lagos, London, Houston, Hong Kong, Kingston, and Karachi. My guest today is Dr. Mojibola Ogunfowora, whose passion is about helping families raise healthy, active children. Dr. Ogunfowora, welcome to When Food Meets Medicine.
Thank you. My name is Dr. Moji Ogunfowora, but a lot of people refer to me as Dr. Shalaja. I'm a board-certified pediatrician. I've been in practice for over 30 years, completed my pediatric residency at New York University Medical Center. Since completing my residency, was initially in a private practice for 5 years, and then I started my practice in 2005. And since then, we've been running pediatric practice in Columbia, South Carolina. I'm glad Dr. Olukoya decided to address this topic because this is something that's become a big issue in the pediatric practice. And like you would all see, and as the discussion continues, you would see how it makes a difference when you try to prevent these issues early as opposed to waiting till too late.
I love that. And I know that I see the downstream of effects of childhood obesity every day at the pharmacy counter. Kids on metformin, kids on blood pressure medication. And every time I think about it, if we had started this conversation probably 10 years earlier, this child might not be here today. So we're going to start at the very beginning this today. Dr. Ogunfowora, you see children and families in your practice every day. What are you actually seeing on the ground, and why does prevention matter now, not in 5 years?
Over the last couple of years, there's been a trend, and it's not only with the children in the United States, it's been all over the world. The kids are getting, lack of a better word, the kids are getting a little bigger. And we've been trying to figure out what is the difference. There's definitely a change in diet. There's a change in exercise, and the kids are more sedentary. In the old days, a lot of the kids would go outside and play. That said and done, we do have a lot of kids too who are in recreational activities, who are doing sports in school. The good side about the sports is they're getting the exercise in. The downside of that is a lot of times these sporting activities end quite late. And when they're done, maybe 7, 8 o'clock, a lot of these parents have to stop. And there's so many fast food places on the way home. And parents have been going all morning, so you really can't blame them. So the first thing to do is they stop at the nearest fast food. And even though the kid has gotten the exercise in, they end up eating some junk food and then taking a shower and going straight to bed. So the exercise, that has been counterproductive because then you've eaten what you're not supposed to eat and then you're going right to bed after that. So one of the things I share with the parents is, especially if you have a child or children who are in sports, even in a family, and I'll give you a good example. Sometimes you might have a family of 3. A lot of times it's just one child who is playing football, but the other 2 younger kids, which happen in my household too, happen to be tag-alongs. So they go along with the parents. The parents are rushing, they get straight from work, put the children in the car, and they go into the sports activity. When the sports activity is over with, it's only the child who participated that got some exercise in. The other 2 kids were probably sitting in the car or playing on the side. And then when they leave, they're hungry and they have to get something to eat. So what I do advise the parents is to restructure the household. One way of
Mm.
doing that is on the weekends, you could have your prep time. So pretty much making the food you're going to eat for the week. So say,
Mm.
for instance, you're from an African household, you might make stew for the week. And then all you have to do that morning when you get up is boiling whatever they're going to eat with it. So that by the time they get back from school, before you get home, they can warm this up, have eaten something healthy, and then go to the sports practice. And then after
Mm.
sports practice, you have some maybe apple slices or a slice of wheat peanut butter sandwich. So they're not eating something heavy after the sports activity. The other thing I also say too is for the children who are not going to participate in the sports, get them engaged in something structured. Don't have them going to those activities with their iPad or the phone and everything. You can actually
Mm.
create something fun on the sideline where they could
Yeah.
also exercise, even though they're not participating in the sports activity that's actually going on. So that's kind of
Yeah.
the little idea I kind of give the parents in ways of dealing with how do I take one child to sports, and even the child I took ends up eating some junk food after the sports
Mm.
activity.
Yeah. Quite helpful and quite insightful. I never even thought about it that way. I know what I see most of the time, which you had mentioned earlier in my practice, is that some of these children, apart from the medications that used to be exclusively for adults, maybe metformin or for prediabetes, statins for cholesterol. I know that these medications work, but they do not fix what caused the problem. Prevention, which is not just a health goal, it's a medication avoidance strategy. And I think that's a conversation we should be having. I know that you kind of spoke a little bit about the formula, but is there any way you could break it down more for parents who've never heard about it before?
Okay. So when we're talking about the 521 questionnaire, it's a questionnaire that a lot of pediatricians use in the practice now just to get an idea what the lifestyle habits is. We call it the 521 healthy habits.
Okay.
And the 5 means that we're trying to get you to eat more than 5 vegetables a day. The
Mm.
2 is we're trying to make sure that you're having less than 2 hours of recreational TV time. And then the 1 means that you should have at least more than 1 hour of exercise. And the 0 means no sugary drinks at all. So this questionnaire, when you look at it, that's pretty much the breakdown. And when you go more into details, it would actually ask you, how much of exercise are you getting? How many times a week do you guys eat together as a family? How many,
Mm.
when you do eat, how many servings of vegetables do you get? How many servings of milk? It's not to make any parent feel uncomfortable, but it's kind of like a little guideline on how to start the conversation. And then when
Mm.
you look at the bottom of that questionnaire, it also goes on to say, if you can improve anything, which areas would you like to work on? Would you like to improve X, Y, Z? Would you like to get more water in? Would you like to exercise more? So it's just a little thing getting the conversation going. And it's interesting though, because initially when we started, the questionnaire was for older kids, but we actually do
Mm.
incorporate the questionnaire as young as 2 years of age, because now we're seeing that even the young ones are starting to be a little bit overweight. In all communities, this is a very, very sensitive topic because of late now, I'm actually having parents coming back to me and saying, oh, no, 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 no. My child is not overweight. It's genetic. My child is just big bone. So that's why you really do have to be very
Mm.
careful when you're dealing with this subject. Yes, there's a genetic component to obesity. Yes, there's some kids that our body frame is different. Some kids would be, but what I go with is I look at the trend. So say you came to me last year, and when you came to me last year, you were, and this is just an example. So you were like 100 pounds. And you come back to me the following year, you're 120 pounds. Then I said to you,
Mm.
hold on, this cannot be genetic. This cannot be, your body frame. This is definitely, you did put on a little more weight than you should have. So it's just being
Yes.
mindful of how you address this topic. And what I've realized over the years is when you deal with it carefully, when you deal with it without being judgmental, when you deal
Yeah.
with it with understanding, the parents tend to be more receptive.
Makes absolute sense. And I like the fact that it's simple. The 5 servings of fruits and vegetables, 2 hours or less for recreation, and 1 hour of physical activity. But I think the real question about one, you said one has to have empathy and the way you handle it with parents. But the real question is, how do you make it work in a real home with real children? Have you seen a formula where adopting this formula works or, genuinely change things?
It takes time. But one thing I do, especially with the younger ones, because, with the older ones, it's easy to say, well, if you don't eat this vegetable, you're not going to go out to play. I tell the
Yeah.
parents to be creative. I said, when you go to the grocery store, let them know there's going to be a green on the plate. and give them a choice for the week to choose what green do they want. So they have that option of, say you chose broccoli and you chose spinach. I'll have 3 things. Choose 2 things so that way you chose it. So we're not going back and forth. So if you want, you could choose, spinach, you could choose broccoli, and then also make it fun. Like when you're serving broccoli, you could make it where you put it like in a little bit of a cheese dip. Also, don't do that in excess, but make it fun, but let them feel like they're in control and they're making that choice. In terms of the sugary drinks, that's very easy. That's just letting them know why that's not good for them. The other thing I also do is I play this game, especially with my teenage kids. And I'll give you a good example. I tell them, I said, you're old enough to do a calorie count. The government implemented this, that when you go to all those fast food places, you can actually know how much calories you're getting in. And I'm not going to mention one of the places, but there's a particular fast food. I tell them, look at the calories on a grilled chicken sandwich, and then look at the calories on a cookie. If you see that the calories on a cookie, one cookie is almost 250 calories, and one grilled chicken sandwich is 350 calories. I'm like, which one is more likely to fill you up? I said, I would use myself as an example. If I have a bag of cookies, I'm going to keep eating it till I'm done and picture how many calories I've taken in. But if I have a good chicken sandwich, that is 350 calories. By the time I'm done with one sandwich, I'm done because I'm full already. So I make my kids, especially the older ones, become a little more calorie conscious. I said there's nothing wrong in enjoying a cookie here and there, but imagine if you had to eat cookies to get full, how many cookies you would have eaten. So I consider that a wasted calorie.
I really like that. I really like how kids can look at calories and decide, what you need to take. It's real. And I like also the fact that the prevention bit, before they start having these bad habits, not just a medical intervention. So we're going to talk about one thing that makes most parents laugh. They laugh nervously. 2 hours or less of recreational screen time. For many families, that ship sailed years ago. So what is the real harm here? And how do you talk to parents about this without shaming them?
When I talk about the screen time, I also let them realize that a lot of them, when they were growing up, they didn't have the screen time. So what I do say to them is, based on the American Academy of Pediatrics, we've all insisted that there's no need for a child under the age of 2 to even have any screen time. And we all know that this is becoming a habit. And when the kids, get used to it, they get fixated on it. A lot of times the feedback is, oh, Dr. Larger, they're watching Miss Rachel, they're watching this. But what I also try to explain to them is, this is a one-sided thing. It's not a conversation. So they're watching something, but they're not responding back. It's just staring at a screen. So I said, why don't we do this? Let's find other options before the age of 2. Okay. It's actually a very sensitive topic, but what I also try to tell the parents too is a lot of them grew up without that kind of screen time. So I said, under the age of 2, let's try to eliminate that and let's get creative by playing games. So for instance, they say to me that, oh, we're only using the screen time because we're in the office with you right now. And we've been waiting. So I tell them, I said, when you're going out, especially when you don't know how long it's going to be, have a bag. In that bag, you put 4 different activities. Crayons with paper where they can color if they get bored, because the attention span of a 2-year-old is very short. Then you can put a game like a shape sorter so they can play with that. And then you can put a book if they want to read a book, and then have a snack. So I said, once you have those basic things in there, so there are things you can transition to while you're waiting. I said, there'll be times when you've done everything you can, and that's the only option you have. That's fine. I also tell them too that instead of doing screen time, that in the car, they can actually play CD that has all those nursery rhymes. So one common one that we do is the wheels on the bus go round and round. So I said, you could actually play that with them, but everything you do should come with some form of activity, not just the child sitting down there and just staring at something, which is not, they're not going back and forth. It's not a conversation. So for my older kids, which is like 2 and all, I always say nothing more than 2 hours. And I say it has to be intentional. So once they've done, they get 30 minutes break. So they play the game for 30 minutes, and then whatever games they're playing, they go outside for 30 minutes. They play again for 30 minutes, and then they go outside for 30 minutes. And then I use the reward system too. If you've had no activity for the day, then you have to go outside before you get to play on your
Screen, iPad or whatever. Yes, the screen.
So that's kind of like a way I do it with the children in the office. Does it always work? No. Sometimes I even have parents who, right in front of my face, they take the phone in a 9-month-old baby and they prop it up on the stand. And mom, dad, and the baby are all staring at
The
the
screen.
monitor. So, but you can only do your best.
True, true, but it's something for people to viewers that didn't have any idea of how to reduce the screen time. At least they have ideas now. But this is something I see from the pharmacy side. Children with disrupted sleep, often tied to screen use at night, they have poor appetite regulation. Their hunger hormones get confused. They crave for more sugar and processed food, probably the next day. So I know that reducing screen time would help with that. And I know it's not just about getting kids moving, it's about sleep quality, focus, and the food choices that follow a bad night's rest. I think they're all connected. So, have you seen a family where when they reduce their screen time, they change more than just activity levels?
Yes, I would say yes to that. And I've seen not just one, a couple of families where they've had an honest discussion with me where they're willing to make a change. And I know this is not what the topic is about today, but there's also been a big association of a lot of screen time with behavior issues. So the other issue you have too is when you talked about sleep disruption, many a times these kids are on the screen and not going to bed. And we know that if you don't have adequate sleep, when you wake up in the morning, you're more cranky. So the likelihood of you being attentive in class goes down too. And I know this is a topic for another day, but going back to what you're saying in terms of how does the activity reducing screen time, how does it prevent reducing screen time and being out there more often? I've had a couple of kids in the office, and what we've done is we've come up with a plan. And I tell the parents, let's challenge ourselves. Let's do this. Let's see. You can go from having 5 hours of screen time to no hours screen time. So I'm like, let's do this. Let's go from 5 hours of screen time and let's reduce it to 3. So that's worked with one family. We went from 5 hours a day and we went down to 3 hours a day. And interestingly enough, even the child came back to tell me that, oh my God, that was lovely. I got to play outside. I was able to do other things. And then those 3 hours they get of screen time, because it's less than what they're used to, they actually value it more. So because they realize that, oh, I don't have, leeway of just going to get my screen when I am. And then they tend to do more things. So that 5 hours, that 3 hours you're getting is tied to other things. So I say to you, if you get your homework done, you're entitled to X amount of screen time. They're more likely to, or if you get your chores done, you're entitled to. But when you give them a free rein, then they're not likely to get their homework done. They're more likely to be playing on the screen time. The other thing I've also done, which has also been very helpful, is we have some parental controls on the screens. So I had a parent in particular who said, oh, I didn't know that you could implement these parental controls. So in her bedroom, especially for the older kids, she would automatically turn off the phone at a certain time. And most times, in the older kids, by 10 o'clock, the parents have turned off the phone. So they don't have access to all the other things they would have. And then by 6 o'clock, she has it back on again. So that's been something else we've done. The other thing we've also done is we've implemented where Monday to Thursday, absolutely no screen time. And your screen time would be on the weekend. So we've also, so we've just done different little things depending on each family and what works with each family. We just try to put things in place. But the most important thing is it's gradual. For it to work, it has to make sense. It has to be gradual. And you also have to have the kid in the room so that you can, and I tell the parents to let them know it's coming from me. And instead of them getting mad at you, they can come to the office, they can call and come and get mad at me. And I would explain to them why it's important that we do this.
Well, I like that a lot. I like the individual planning for each family. Every family dynamics is different.
Exactly.
And I like that you get the brunt of the anger, not the
Not the
parents if they're
parents.
gonna be
Yes,
angry.
yes.
Another thing I would like to I know that on the other side of that is physical activity, which you'd spoken about. Does it have to be a sport or does dancing in the kitchen at work?
It doesn't have to be a sport, but it has to be an activity that your heart rate will get elevated. So you just can't do like a 5-10 minute. So you could go online and the whole family can do this together. You can get a video online, like a dance video, and you guys can all dance till you sweat. But an activity with no increased heart rate, with no sweating, is probably not going to burn the calories you're trying to burn. But you can make it a lot of fun. And I'll go back to when I said in many households you have maybe just one child playing football. and then the other two kids are just there because they have no one to watch them. So with those kind of the kids who are out there, you can make an obstacle course. You can make it fun. You can just come up with anything. Say, why don't you run from here to see here? Let's see how fast you can run. So again, it doesn't have to be sport. But going back to what you said, a lot of families don't realize, and I do share this with the family. In most cities, they have a recreational center. So sometimes the finances could be the reason why a child is not participating in sports. But at least I can say for our city, Columbia, South Carolina, we have some rec centers. And in the rec centers, the prices are actually reasonable and they're controlled. And if you cannot afford it, some of those places do even offer scholarships where you can actually sign your child up. But for the most part, those things are available. And that's something, again, you can incorporate, you can sign up for recreational parks.
I like the fact that there are options, and sometimes exercise is literally medicine. Sometimes physical activity improves insulin sensitivity, reduces inflammation, supports healthy weight. I know you'd mentioned something about hyperactivity earlier, and we're going to touch a little bit on it today. For children with ADHD, regular physical activity can reduce hyperactivity and improve attention, sometimes as much as medication. So when we say 1 hour, 2 hours of movement, that's clinical recommendation, not a parenting nicety. So I'm going to go back to 5 servings of fruits, vegetables, the one that makes every parent groan for some families. The only vegetable the child will eat is ketchup. So how do you help families get there without turning meal times into a war?
Okay. And remember, I said to you too, though, the good thing about it is one other thing I use, which is not the most ideal, is I use smoothies. So I tell the parents that a lot of the children like smoothies. So one thing you can do is you could make a smoothie. They love fruits. A lot of them do love fruits. The fruits they like. So have them choose what fruits they like. Hopefully it will be the dark fruits, like the strawberries and the blueberries and the grapes. So you could use that with some milk. And then you could put a handful of your green vegetable you're trying to do in there without them knowing. So you can mask the vegetable. For kids that are absolutely no, you can mask the vegetables. And that's how they came up with those drinks, like, the V8 drinks. Before the V8 drinks were just vegetables and the children didn't like it. So they came up with veg fruit, where some of those drinks will have the fruits in it. For me, it's not the most ideal, but it's better than nothing. I'd rather you do a homemade smoothie while you're using your fresh fruits and your fresh vegetables. So I do encourage that a lot. The other thing I said too, which I had said to you from the onset with the green vegetables, getting creative. It doesn't have to be a lot, but it could be, why don't you do this? Let's try, we're going to have 3 green vegetables. Let's try, see which one you're good at. And if they do well, you could do a treat. It could be a sticker. It could be anything that could lead up to a bigger reward later on at the end of the week.
I think I like the strategy of the sticker. You get rewarded for, even though you're eating healthy, but you think you're getting a reward for it.
Yeah.
The strategies you just mentioned do work. Fruit, vegetables provide vitamins and minerals and fiber that support everything from immune function to focusing in school. When children are deficient, we see in their energy, their growth, their mood. And I do want to name something important for 5 global families. 5 servings does not mean 5 servings of broccoli and spinach. It could be plantain, it could be mango, it could be okra, it could be papaya, sweet potato, yams, bitter lemon. These are nutrients dense, culturally foods, and they do count. And the 521, I think that's what you said, 21 formula
5210.
5210 formula works in every kitchen in the world. So now the last part, I know you mentioned the V8, the drinks, 0 sugary drinks, and a lot of parents say that their child simply would not drink it. I like the idea where you say they could pick the fruits they want and you mask it. If children are not wanting to take it, what are the realistic strategies if a kid is hooked on carbonated drinks or sugary drinks? What are the strategies to get them off of it?
The first thing would be to dilute it. So I always tell the parents that there's no need for even orange juice, even though you're saying it's a natural orange juice, it's sweet as it is. So just add some water to it. So that helps reduce the sugar content.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then lean them more and more towards, there's a birthday party. You drink a soda here and there. But it's not like with every meal, like you went to McDonald's, you have to have like a large fizzy drink. No. And even if you don't have a choice, I tell parents choose healthy as a child. So say, for instance, you went to one of the fast food places, you got a sandwich. You don't need the French fries. You can substitute that for fruits. You don't need the
Yeah.
soda. You can get water or you can get juice. So it's just a matter of, and once you've done that for a bit, then it's easier to tell the parent next time that, okay, now we're doing a little better with our choices at the fast food place. So I always say that gradually. So say you eat out 5 days a week. The first thing I tell you is, why don't we try to cut that down to 2 days a week? You come back to me the following year. Oh, guess what, Dr. Wadi, I'm so excited. My child only eats out 2 days a week. Oh my God, that's wonderful. Why don't we try one day a week? So that way, they're more likely to be receptive because they realize they went from 5 to 2. So why can't they go from 2 to 1? And that's again
0.
exactly what I do with the orange juice. You start with a little bit of water, and then you go to half and half dilution. And before you know what, the child is actually drinking more water than the juice. And like, oh, I can actually do this. So it's a
Yeah.
matter of encouraging them and reducing the sugar content.
That's quite encouraging, and I like the strategy. And one the reason why this is quite important, liquid sugar is the fastest route to insulin resistance. And when a child drinks soda or fruit juice, blood sugar spikes quickly. There's no fiber to slow it down, and the pancreas has to work over time. Over time, that drives insulin resistance and eventually type 2 diabetes. And this is a global issue. I know you'd mentioned that this is not just an American issue we're having at the beginning of the show. In some cultures, it could be malt drinks in West Africa, fruit nectars in Latin America, and fizzy drinks at every party, in every culture. The issue is not the occasion, it's why this have become daily habits. Have you seen a child whose health improved just cutting out sugary drinks completely?
Okay.
With your
Before we,
strategy, though, with
yeah, no.
starting with
Well,
the dilution.
yeah, but before we even go to that, I was also going to mention another point because, as we're having this conversation, we're talking about how this is not just an issue within the United States, it's actually a global issue. And it's quite interesting that for a very long time, especially in the
You
African
just
continent,
froze.
they didn't have a lot of these fast food places. Now, with wealth, more and more people are bringing in all those fast food franchises. And it's interesting to see that it's actually the children of the wealthy people who can afford this fast food and is now being seen as a symbol of wealth. And on my recent trip to Nigeria, I realized that a lot of these countries are actually having fast food places coming up. The franchises, they're everywhere. And it's actually a problem among the wealthy people because being able to eat at these fast food places is considered a symbol of wealth, believe it or not. So a lot of these kids feel like once I've had this is an outing. We're going to Kentucky Fried Chicken. We're going to any of those places that was never there before. And that's why I said that this weight issue is actually a global thing, but it just tends to affect different parts of the world differently. Now, going back to, you did ask me a question about, have I seen exercise, how it's made a difference in any of my patients? Yes, it has. It really has. On one occasion, I had this young lady who her BMI was way above the 95th percentile. She was about 15 years of age. And on her neck, her neck was really dark. And her mom would constantly force at her that, oh my God, you're not washing your neck well. You need to do something about this neck. This neck is really dark and everything. And when she came in on one visit, and I said to the mom, I said, no, she's taking a good wash. I said, the reason why her neck is dark is because of what we call acanthosis nigricans, which just means, some form manifestation of insulin resistance, and that's making her more prone to type 2 diabetes. The mom sat up because all along she just thought that, she never realized that this could lead to. And she's like, oh my, I didn't know that, this is what this is all about. So we had a plan. We said we're going to, again, I start off with by saying that it has to be a realistic goal. The mom's next question was, oh my God, what should her ideal weight be? I'm like, you cannot take someone who is 200 pounds and say the ideal weight should be 145 pounds. That in itself is discouraging. She's not even going to listen to me. She's just
Yeah, of course.
shut it down right away because it's not
Yeah.
realistic. So I said, why don't we do this? Why don't we shoot to lose at least a pound a month? And I said to the young lady, I said, initially you may not realize you've lost some, so don't get discouraged. But let's start with that. So before we did that, we brought her back in to get some fasting blood draw. And lo and behold, her A1C was already at the pre-diabetic level. We did her lipid panel. Her lipid panel was also off.
Mm.
And we happened to have done a vitamin D level too, and we did an ALT. When we do the ALT, we're looking for what we call fatty liver, and that was also slightly elevated. So what I realized is showing the mom and the young lady these numbers in true time, that made a big difference. So we had a big conversation. We're like, what time do you have your last meal? Interestingly enough, she was proud to tell me that, oh, guess what, Dr. Salaja, I do not eat breakfast. I'm like, that's a problem. I said, you don't eat breakfast. So by the time you sit down to eat lunch, you're probably going to be more hungry. And most times you're in school, so you're probably going to go, if you don't like what's being served, you're going to go to the vending machine and choose
That's
what's
good.
not good for you.
Yeah.
So I said, you can control what you get for breakfast by just waking up a little earlier. It doesn't have to be anything heavy. It could be grains. It could be yogurt. It could be a slice of wheat toast. So we had that discussion. I said, it might also work in your best interest to take your lunch to school so you know what you're getting. And then try as much as possible to make sure you're done with dinner between 6 and 7. And then we talked about incorporating some exercise with it. Believe it or not, when she came back the following, we actually did 6 months. We didn't wait till the year. So she came back in 6 months. So she was over 200 pounds. She was already under 200 pounds. The elevated A1C and the lipid panel, even though they were not back to normal, which I did not expect, but you could see the general trend that it was
Better.
going down.
Yeah.
And she actually was, happy to tell me that she felt that her lifestyle, she felt healthier. She felt
Yeah.
she could do more. She was more active. And the mom turned around to say, you know what? For this to work, we actually made a full lifestyle change. So the whole household is actually
Wow.
incorporating,
Wow.
the healthier habits.
Yeah, it's
So
so
that,
so important and so encouraging for that
yes,
family because they've
yes, it
seen one
was.
person, yeah, it's done better, and exercise, food. I think food as medicine is one of the most direct sense. Sometimes no prescription required, and I know sometimes family have a problem deciding what to eat and what not to get. And for families who want a practical meal plan built around your children's health or your child's health needs and their own cuisine, the meal plan tool at Pharma Plan Systems can help. You tell your family's health goals and food preferences, and it's built a plan you can actually use. The link will be in the show notes. But we're going to now go to where we would ask, we want to get practical now. There are parents listening who are working two jobs, raising multiple children, living in food deserts where food produce is expensive or hard to find. How do they make 4-2 work for them?
Okay. I'm just going to say one more thing before we move on to, because now we're focusing more on the preventive aspect of it. But I also want to comment on, if you don't do this stuff, what could happen later on. And again, going back to another classic example, and what I've been seeing a lot is we have this young ladies who for the longest, the average age of having your period was 11 years of age. Now, and that was, you were probably in middle school when you started your period.
Yeah.
But now I'm getting it now in elementary school. And it's sad to see that this young kids are actually handling it very well because it's almost become the order of the day. So
No.
now we're having 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds having periods. And for an 8-year-old to have a period, that means you must have started your puberty as early as 6 years of age.
Wow.
So when you look at it this way, and what we've kind of done is try to figure out, why is it that we're having a lot of these young people doing what adults should be doing at such a young age and all that? We realize that when you go back and look at the data, you look at the numbers, a lot of these kids also fall into the overweight category. They're not all, but majority of them are in the overweight category. One other thing too we've seen is that when they're actively exercising, it actually delays the onset of puberty. So that we've seen already. So having them be more active without a doubt. And I would say there was a family that came to the office. This is by end of October. We had this family that came in. When they came to us, the older sister, they moved from Nigeria. The older sister was 15. And she came in and she went into the 10th grade. When she came in, she hadn't started her period. Her youngest sister that came with her was in elementary school. And when she came, she was in about the third or fourth grade. Lo and behold, the youngest sister, the whole family history, their period started at 16. But this young one started at 11. And when I looked back, I said, what was the difference? There was definitely a difference in diet. Because when the older one came, she didn't have a period, and she didn't have a period till she turned 16. You may argue that that's on the later side.
Yeah.
But the younger one started much, much earlier. So there was definitely a discrepancy between them starting. So when I look back, I started looking at families and trying to see the general trend now is a lot of families, as the kids who are overweight tend to start puberty much earlier. I think for some parents, when they're listening to this conversation, knowing that their second grader, their third grader might be in school with a period, that's enough to want to make a change. Now, going back to what you said about, yes, you're right. A lot of people live in areas where they may not have access to fresh produce. Yes, you're right about that. There's sometimes some families just, either financially, they may not have access. The parents are working 2 or 3 jobs. Let's address the people that are working a couple of jobs. And I always use myself as an example. It is all about sacrificing, okay? And what do I mean by that? You may have to wake up a little earlier than you normally do. So I know I have to go to 3 or 4 hospitals before I go to the office in the morning. So I have to get up at 5 because I know I like to exercise before going out. So I know I have to wake up a little earlier. When I still had, I'm an empty nester, thank God, but when I had kids in the household, I would figure out on the weekend, I make a meal prep. What are we going to eat Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday? I make the base of what it's going to be. So while I'm getting ready in the morning, while I'm exercising, I'm making whatever they're going to eat with that base. I have little pouches of, as we're driving, I know my child is going to say, can I have that? Can I have that? As they're saying, can I have that in the back seat? In the front seat, I'm giving them something to drink. I'm giving them the little snack that has whatever snacks they like. It could be, I do a lot of skinny popcorn. I'm giving them the skinny popcorn. I'm giving them the 100-calorie cookies. So even before they can say, can I have something to get. And these are things that, yes. And these are things that you can do on a Sunday night. Just every now and then you may slip off because something happened and you had no control of it. But if you're intentional, you're more likely to get that done. That's one. 2, you talked about fresh produce and all. Luckily enough, especially those of us that live in the United States, a lot of places have farmers market. And the farmers market come to different locations at different times. Maybe go ahead and Google, where is the next farmers market? When is it going to be? And make time to go out there and get what you want in bulk. So you're not going there every day. Once you do that, that's another way too. And you'd be amazed to see that if you do all this stuff, the amount of money, I do this in my changes. I'm like, the amount of money you spend on that fast food, put it in a little money box. And at the end of the week, see how much you saved. So that's another little exercise we play.
I like that a lot. You mentioned the farmers market. We have that here too. We actually have one stable one that you can actually go to each time, and you meal prep. I know there are families in our audience that cook Nigerian meals or Jamaican meals or Mexican tortillas, and so there's so many foods in our cultures that are not unhealthy. So none of us have unhealthy food you can adopt to be the healthy part of it, that smaller portions of sweet things sometimes, like Dr. Shula just said, swap fizzy drinks with water sometimes, adopt those formulas. And the 5-to-1 formula does not ask families to eat differently from their culture. It just asks them to be intentional. Like you said, be intentional about things you do, the exercise, the food, and all that. And
I'm going to interrupt you for a second.
Go ahead,
because
please.
I see that you lay emphasis on the fact that, it doesn't stop you eating foods from your culture. A lot of parents out here come with good intentions and they want to keep the culture. But the truth about it is when our kids go to school, and I see that a lot, and it cuts across all cultures, they don't want to be identified with, say, the Nigerian culture. Oh, mom, I'm not taking jollof rice to school. The Spanish culture. Oh, no, I'm not taking a tortilla to school. Because they want to fit in. In the new generation we live in, there's this thing about wanting to fit in. And I get it. A lot of kids are moving away from their culture. The parents are pulling them in one hand and saying, this is what you're going to eat. The kids are saying on the other hand that, no, that smells. I'm not going to take that to school. And at the end of the day, if you do not, you have to compromise. Because if you don't compromise, I promise you, that lunchbox is going into the trash can.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
So you do have to say to the child, what do you want to take to school for lunch? Not this is what you're taking to school for lunch.
Big
And when they
emphasis.
share with you what they want to take to school for lunch, then you have to redirect and say, okay, we could do this, but why don't we have this? Why don't you put a fruit in there? Why don't you put a bottle of water in there? So you just it's not your way and only your way.
The highway.
That has changed. We're living with a new generation of people have an opinion, they have a mind, and if you insist, it's going to end up in the trash can.
And then they get something in school anyway that they want.
In the vending machine.
Yes. Thank you for that, Dr. Shivaji. And I'm going to bring the pharmacy side because I know that some medications children are prescribed can directly affect their their weight, and appetite. What are you seeing in your practice, and how do you help families manage this?
Okay, that's a good point. One is because they're still young and they still can lose the weight naturally. I'm not one to quickly prescribe medication. Now, I would say though, in extreme cases, we've had cases where, especially when the A1C is quite high, I've had to use metformin. But I also let them know that this is a temporary fix. And what's more important is going back to the preventive measures, which we alluded to much earlier on, which is watching what you're eating and the exercise. Nothing beats that. Because no matter how much medication you take, at some point in time, you are either going to forget or not want to take it anymore. So changing your lifestyle. So when I talk about a healthy lifestyle, to me, that's more important than the medication. But yes, in extreme cases. We also sometimes have kids who have comorbidity. And what do I mean by that? I do have some kids who happen to be obese and may have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder with it. When I'm choosing the medication to manage that, I might sometimes put that in mind. I may use some like Vyvanse, which has been associated with weight loss to kind of like counter that. But going back to that, I always say that medication is, especially for my pediatric population, is always not my first to go to. Lately, I've had a lot of parents who've come to me, and of course, you know what they want. Everybody knows. Oh, Dr. Slaja, can I get Ozempic? Can I get Wegovy? Why am I not getting that? The older kids have been a little upset at me for being reluctant to prescribe that. But I tell the parents, I said, you know what? Yes, you can. But at the end of the day, it's working now, but it's still too soon, especially because there's still pediatric population, what it's going to lead to down the road. So, it's been looked at. The safety measures, the FDA has looked at all that, so I'm not going to speak to that. But I always say one thing that would never fail you is your weight and your exercise.
Yeah, you're quite correct. There's some drugs that we see, like steroids, prednisolone, that increase appetite and sometimes causes significant weight gain. I think the strategy that I recommend most of the time is fill the child up with high fiber, high protein food sometimes, and so they feel satisfied without overeating. And the ADHD medications you mentioned, like Adderall, Ritalin, Concerta, Vyvanse is good because of the weight loss thing. I know some of them suppress appetite during the day, and the strategy I recommend to my patients sometimes, they're good protein-rich breakfast before the medication takes effect. Small snacks offered throughout the day, like you did with your kids. Sometime before they ask, you already know what you're going to give them. Don't let the child go to whole school without eating. Some antipsychotic medications do cause significant weight gain and do increase the risk of insulin resistance. So I would make sure you ask your pediatrician or pharmacist what to watch for if the kids are on some of these medications. Whole foods, high fiber, high protein is normally what we'd recommend. So now I'm going to go to, do kids need vitamins and supplements, or can they get everything from food?
That's a good question. If they're eating properly, you probably could get everything from the diet. But who defines what is properly? And for instance, I'll give you a good example. Vitamin D deficiency is now very common. And in the old days, it wasn't as common as it is. I do have kids that when we draw the vitamin D level, I've had someone as low as 3, that low. And you want the level to be at least above 30. So when you think about it now, is that a lot of children do not go outside for many reasons. Safety reasons, number one. So the amount of sunlight they get in, which would have been a great source of vitamin D, is not there. Unfortunately, especially amongst Black people, we tend to be lactose intolerant. So you have a lot of Black kids that do not drink milk. So there's no sunlight, there's no milk. So already you're down two things. So even though, and I'm using vitamin D as a classic example, so even though you're trying to get everything through diet, it's going to be harder because how much orange juice fortified with vitamin D are you going to drink? How much of the leafy greens are you really going to eat? So many a times, if you do truly have a balanced diet and you have the right exposure to sunlight, which kids in other countries, like the African countries, are very fortunate where they still do go outside, they may not need supplements like we do. But because of lifestyle changes, that's why a lot of times the children might need that additional supplement.
So from what you just said, food first, always, because you can get most of it from your food.
Yes.
Vitamin D, sometimes we're not getting as much as we want, and which is needed for bone health and immunity. Sometimes maybe in cold climates also, they may not be able to get it. They can't go out. And is also important for energy and focus. Omega-3 for the brain. So we're not saying that they're not supplement fill gaps, but they do not replace food. And as Dr. Shilaja has said, food first. And then if they do need it, ask your pharmacist, ask your pediatrician before starting a child on any supplement, because dosing for children is quite different from adult dosing. And if you do want to understand which supplements are safe alongside with any medication your child takes, I do have a book called Foods That Clash with Your Prescriptions. It covers supplement interactions alongside about 85 medications, written in plain languages for families. And the link would be in the show. Dr. Shilaja, we have this section called Rapid Fire. I ask you questions and you kind of answer real quick. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So the first question, one vegetable kids love when prepared right.
Broccoli.
Okay. Best outdoor activity for a child who hates exercise.
Swimming.
Nice. Okay. Healthy snack swaps for chips or cookies, or one that kids would actually eat.
Skinny popcorn.
Nice. Okay. One screen time boundary every family should set starting tonight.
Watching it together as a family. Watching a show together as a family.
Should children drink sports drink after playing sports?
Preferably water.
Okay. Biggest mistake parents make when trying to get kids to eat healthier?
Not explaining why.
Can kids have dessert every day?
No.
No. No, I don't think a lot of kids will be happy with you on that.
No.
Okay. One thing every parent can do today, just one, to improve your child's health.
Being intentional and doing your best.
Yeah, I think I like that. Being intentional, because it pays off on the long run, consistency and being intentional. So, Dr. Shilaji, before we go, if there's one message you want every parent or caregiver listening to carry from this conversation, what would it be?
I think they should leave here not feeling like they're being judged. They should leave here feeling like we're here to help. We understand. We've all walked their shoes and we're just looking for the best in the children because they're a future generation of tomorrow.
I like that. The future of tomorrow and no judgments. You don't have to be perfect. I think what I hope every parent takes from today is that all you have to do is just start. You don't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to go smoothly. The 5-to-1 formula is simple, sustainable, and powerful. You take 5 servings of fruits and vegetables, 2 hours or less of screen time, 1 hour of physical activity, and 0 sugary drinks. And this is not about putting your child on a diet. It's about building a healthy life for your whole family. Small changes made consistently, and it changes the trajectory of their lives. Dr. Shilaja, I want to thank you so much. You've given parents real hope, real tools today. Where can people find you?
It will be posted on your link.
Okay. Thank you so much. Before we close, 2 things I want every parent to remember. The MediMeal Safe App checks any food against your medications in real time. And my book, Foods That Clash with Your Prescriptions, cover how food affects over 85 medications. Everything will be in the show notes. Thank you so much. And to every parent, grandparent, teachers, and caregivers listening, wherever you are in the world, thank you. Thank you for showing up for the children in your life in this way. If this episode helped you, share it with another parent who's trying, because most of us are trying. And most of us could use a little more of this conversation. So subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube so you never miss an episode of When Food Meets Medicine. Until next time, eat smart, your meds matter, and your body will love you for it. Thank you, everyone.